The Atlanta Braves have an opportunity to get back in the wild card race. Question is, do they do it? We'll talk about that and more on a special live edition of Braves Today. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today for Friday, June 13th. This is our weekly live show. So we are live. Thank you to everybody who's hopping into YouTube right now. Have your questions ready. We'll do our best to get to those at the end of the show or throughout the show as we usually do. I'm your host, Lindsey Crosby. You can follow me on social media at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on X, Braves_today. We have a Facebook page and an Instagram as well. And you can find all of my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. A bunch of stuff we're going to get to today. I want to talk about some of the offensive changes we've seen from the Braves in the data. They're trying to do things differently in the month of June than they did in the month of May. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about Marcell Ozuna, right? We've got questions on how effective he can be with the hip injury. We now have a sample. There are some different things to do here, as well as discuss some potential trades, right? We've seen the conversation. If you're not able to get back into the postseason picture, you may be a seller at the deadline. First time you've done that since, I think, 2017. But first, let's talk about the way you could do that, because today starts a really interesting stretch where the Atlanta Braves, from now to the All-Star break, have a bunch of teams who are either in the division or are not doing great, under 500 clubs. The one exception they have is the Cardinals. The Cardinals are the last team on the road before you head to, before they come home for the All-Star break. Cardinals are in second place behind the Cubs and a winning record. Everybody else is either below 500, a division rival, or both in the case of the Marlins. So in case you kind of forgot here, the Braves have 3 against Colorado this weekend. They have an off day, 3 at home versus the Mets. They go to Miami for 3. They go to New York to face the Mets for 4. They come home for the Phillies, the Angels, the Orioles. They go to Sacramento for the A's. They go to St. Louis for the Cardinals. All-Star break. I still don't think it's likely that the Braves make the postseason, but there is a path here. And what has to happen? Like, okay, we're in a thing here. They are 29-38. Every team that's been the number 3 seed in the postseason since we've had the number 3 wild card, since we've had that, has won at least 84 games. And the average number of wins all of the wild card teams have had in that era is 87. So for Atlanta to do that, they would need to go 55-40 in their final 95 games. I don't want to get too far into the second half of the season. Let's just talk about now to the All-Star break. And for the record, the Braves have won at least 55 games in a 95-game stretch, 37 times in the franchise's history. They've done it 20 times since 1995. So they have been this good at times in recent history, but I want to keep it to between now and the All-Star break. I wrote some of this up over on Braves Today. Came out on, I think, on Wednesday or Thursday. I'm trying to remember. I think it was Thursday it came out. You have the divisional games. Those are going to be the tough ones in this stretch. 10 of your 13 divisional games, New York and Philly have a combined winning percentage of 607. But a couple things help you here. The first one is you get a bunch of home games. And this team has been much better at home on the road. Now, I know that part of that is the terrible 0-7 start, right? In San Diego and in LA, they hit a collective 151 with a 234 slug. That's terrible. But it's still significantly different at home and away for the Atlanta Braves, right? At home this year, the Atlanta Braves have the 9th best batting average in baseball at 256. They have a 401 slug, 322 on base. On the road, it's a 233 average with a 314 on base and a 374 slug. It's the 23rd overall batting average on the road and the 9th best at home, which is a significant difference. Again, I think that first 7 games for San Diego and LA is doing a lot of work there. But they absolutely can do this. They have 5 home series and 4 road series on this stretch between now and the All-Star break. And again, they're better at home and on the road. And on the road series, 2 of those are against bad teams. The Marlins have like a 379 winning percentage. The A's have like a 371. And that was as of Wednesday night, Thursday morning when I wrote this. So you're in a situation where, one, the schedule lines up favorably for you to hopefully sweep the Rockies this weekend. I did see where Lady Braves threw that in the chat. I do think you have to sweep Colorado for this to start happening. But the schedule lines up favorably where you play better at home. Your tougher matchups are at home. Your easier matchups, for the most part, are on the road. So there's a path there. I think another thing that can help, and maybe we don't all realize how egregious this has been. Chris Sale has made 14 starts for the Braves. 2 of them have been against an NL East rival. Both of them were Philly. And I believe we won both of those games. I'm trying to remember. I think we won both games. He got 1 win in that. He's made 6 starts against the NL West. It's a little absurd that he's made 6 against the NL West and 2 against the NL East. He is the scheduled starter on Sunday against Colorado. But there is, if you bump him from Sunday, let's say Braves win the first 2 games of the series, they don't have to use the bullpen a ton. They have an off day on Monday. They say either we're going to go with the Bolt guy, we're going to go with the bullpen game, whatever. Or call somebody up for a start and then send them back down. If you bump Sale to Tuesday, he'll face the New York Mets. You would much rather get a 7-inning vintage Chris Sale start against New York than you would getting it against Colorado, right? And then he would be able to either start against Miami on the 22nd, or if you bump him again, start against New York on the 23rd and Philly on the 28th. Like, Chris Sale's 4-2 with a 1.61 ERA in his last 10 starts. He's been vintage Cy Young caliber Chris Sale in the last 2 months, month and a half here. But again, he's barely pitched against your division. And with a little bit of a tweak, bumping him from Sunday, which they have done before. Remember when they made a bump and they called Elder up for a start on a random day and bumped everybody back a day? If you bump Sale to Tuesday, you can potentially get him for 3 consecutive division starts, 2 against the Mets, 1 against Philly. So, like, a lot of things line up here. Now, obviously, a lot of that depends on, you've got to win the first 2 games against Colorado. You have to either have a starter you trust in AAA that's lined up. You know, maybe you want to move Austin Cox back and do something else. And a couple people in the chat have made good points that you can't take any sort of win for granted. And that is absolutely correct. You need to sweep Colorado. You need to win every series from here on out if you want to be in the situation that I'm advocating for. If you do that, by the way, if you sweep Colorado and then you win every series between now and the All-Star break, that is that is a 20-8 record in this stretch. That would put you at a 516 winning percentage, which would put you not in a wild card spot, but like the second team out of the wild card spot by just a couple games. And the Braves have been close to that good in stretches this year. From April 18th, which was the start of the homestand, to May 18th, which was the series win in Boston. The Braves went 19-10. So right there, I mean, very good stretch. And very close to the 20-8 that we're asking for in this next stretch. Now, some of the opponents were easier. You swept Minnesota in there, things like that. But we've seen an example of how the Braves have been able to do that this season. And in that stretch, no one part of the team or no one player carried Atlanta to that 19-10 record. They hit 262 in that span. They scored like 4.5 runs a game. They averaged 1 home run a game. Nothing egregious. The pitching staff had a 3.33 ERA in that span. Struck out like a batter an inning on average. Allowed like a single homer per 9 innings. So the offense wasn't especially amazing. The pitching staff wasn't especially amazing. They were all just good, and you went 19-10. So you have, albeit a little bit lesser competition, but also without Ronald Acuna Jr., you have an example of Atlanta being this good for a month. We're asking here, can you do it again with the addition of Ronald Acuna Jr. for a month and a couple weeks? We'll see. No guarantees, obviously. We're going to figure out what to do there and kind of what happens. We'll see after this weekend how we feel like the Braves are doing. Special shout out to Georgia fan in the comments asking the question, are we booing Orlando Arcia tonight? I don't want to boo Orlando Arcia. Orlando Arcia did everything you could have asked for and more. He filled in at shortstop the best that he was able to. He played the best he could. It's not his fault that you counted on him to be a starter at shortstop on a World Series contending team. That's not his fault. He did everything that he could. And while he ultimately was not good enough offensively and his defense started to slack, it wasn't for lack of effort. Everybody that we've talked to, everybody that we've heard, he was legitimately working his butt off. And even when he got benched for Nick Allen, he was one of the guys in the dugout that was always cheering on other people. He was the first one up, making noise, picking guys up, rooting on people, being like the vibes guy. You know, shades of Guillermo Heredia. We just need to give him some pink swords. I really do hope Lady Race makes a joke. It's Friday the 13th. I hope that he doesn't do anything absurd in this series. He walked off somebody, I think it was on Thursday. I really don't want Orlando Arcia to like just destroy the Braves this weekend. I am a firm believer in revenge games. So I am really worried that Orlando Arcia is going to come back and have a revenge game. He deserves to get a cheer the first time that he comes to the plate, and he deserves to not get booed unless he starts like showing out with extra bases and home runs and all that stuff against Atlanta. All right. I just spent 10 minutes talking about a scenario where the Braves could potentially get back into contention in the wild card, get over 500, and put you in a position where they can be competitive again for the rest of the season. If they don't do it, which absolutely is a possibility, what do you do then? What does the trade deadline look like? What do the personnel decisions look like? And either way, should you maybe consider sitting Marcell Ozuna for a little bit? We'll do all of that next, right here on Braves Today. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Chinook Seedery. Absolute best sunflower seeds in the market. Y'all have heard me talk about this a lot at this point. Listen, 8 flavors, all fantastic flavors. The original, nice blend of saltiness and sweetness. That's my personal favorite. But lemon pepper, jalapeno ranch. I crushed a bag of those yesterday. Parmesan pepper, cinnamon toast, dill pickle, hatch chili, smokehouse barbecue. Can't go wrong with any of these flavors. Promo code BRAVES at ChinookSeedery.com get you a couple things. If you buy a sampler pack, they always ship those for free, but you get 10% off the order. When you figure out what you like, which you can also, if you don't want to buy them online and have them shipped to try them all, you can get bags this size at Buc-ee's all over the Southeast. You can either buy a variety pack, some of every flavor, or you build your own case with your own flavors. Promo code BRAVES get you 10% off, get you free shipping on orders over $40, and supports the Braves Today podcast. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsey Crosby, our live show. Thank you to everybody who's here in the YouTube comments. I've seen a lot of stuff already that I've tried to star to make sure we grab when I get a second here. I want to talk about if the Braves don't get back into contention, okay? They have not been sellers since, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was like 2017 is the last time that they were not is that they were selling at the deadline. I want to say that was, I'm trying to remember who it was that they moved, but maybe it was like catcher Anthony Recker, I think, got traded that year. If the Braves make some moves at the deadline, there's a couple players that could move. And the number one guy is Marcell Ozuna. Okay. He's on an expiring deal. He's not making an egregious salary, $16 million this year. Anybody that takes on Marcell Ozuna at the deadline only pays what's remaining on his contract from the trade deadline through the end of the year. Okay. So it's not a massive financial commitment to get Marcell Ozuna. And it would allow the Braves, one, to cash in on an expiring asset. But then also, if they wanted to bring him back, and I have doubts on whether that's the best move to do, simply because he gives you no defensive versatility, and you would not have the ability to rotate guys in, whether it is Ronald Acuna Jr. or they at DH, whether it is whichever catcher is not starting, all of that stuff. I question the wisdom from a roster construction perspective of bringing back Marcell Ozuna next season, but it is undeniable that he's become one of the leaders on the offensive side of the clubhouse. I can't talk today. On the offensive side of the clubhouse. And so losing that influence, what does that do to a clubhouse that's already lost Freddie Freeman, that's lost Dansby Swanson, that's lost Max Fried, that lost Travis d'Arnaud, all of these guys that people have pointed to and said, hey, it feels like we're missing that leadership, right? It feels like the Braves are missing that veteran presence in the clubhouse that guys turn to. And I've read so many quotes and stories and heard so many players speak about Marcell Ozuna pulling them to the side and giving them a pep talk, giving them a tip, giving them info that helped them, whether it was mechanically or even just mentally, right? The confidence boost. And not just, I think a lot of us have a tendency to kind of assume that the Latin players all associate with the Latin players and everybody else is in a separate bucket and everything. And there is some of that in the clubhouse, right? It was something where Ronald and Ozzy Albies and Marcell Ozuna and Orlando Arcia were always together all the time. They were always together. But I've heard from Michael Harris, who's talked about, I remember last year he was in that slump and he had a big game against the Mets. And he said he talked about like Marcell Ozuna pulled him to the side in the middle game of that series into the tunnel and had a conversation with him. And from that point forward, he went on a heater. Chris Sale this year has talked about Marcell Ozuna pulling him to the side when he was struggling and saying, like, as a hitter, here's what I saw with your stuff and how it's different. And I still think it's fantastic. And I still think that, you know, that you're one of the best pitchers in baseball and et cetera, et cetera. And yes, Sale figured it out from some other mechanical tweaks, right? It was some torso tilt stuff and an arm angle thing and all of that. But he specifically made a point to talk to the media about how Marcell Ozuna helped him. And so like Marcell Ozuna is, I would put him in the top 3 for leaders in the clubhouse right now. It's Marcell Ozuna, it's Chris Sale, and honestly, it's probably Spencer Strider. And that can be an indictment if you want it to be on the free agency decisions the Braves have made and everything else. But at the same time, there is something to losing that guy. So I'm still torn on what you do with Marcell Ozuna. With free agency, do you bring him back and things like that? But I do think that you're in a situation right now where we do need to have a conversation about whether or not you want to contend, whether or not you want to bring back Marcell Ozuna, you want to trade him, whatever. Is it time to let him sit and rest a little bit? Okay. We all know he has this hip injury, some sort of tear. We don't have specific information. Supposedly, he can't make it worse, and it's not going to fully heal without surgery. Okay. which could impact his free agency and means maybe he comes back on a 1-year deal to Atlanta. We don't know. But before the injury, which he suffered in Tampa Bay and missed the Toronto series, before the injury, he was batting .306 with a 1.008 OPS, 16 walks, 17 strikeouts in those 15 games, 3 home runs. Since the injury, he's played 48 games. He's hitting .243 with a 763 OPS. Okay. He has 7 home runs in 48 games when he was on pace for close to 10 home runs. And he's struck out 11 times more than he's walked. Okay. So it's very clear that before and after the injury, he has been a different player. And what's wild to me is other than the 3 games he missed in Atlanta getting checked out after suffering the injury, Marcell Ozuna hasn't missed a single game. And since late May, the last 17 games, he's batting .203. He has a 576 OPS. Literally, his OPS is half of what it was prior to the injury in the last 2 weeks, right? Sample size is the same. The 15 games before the injury, the last 17 games, his OPS is almost half of what it was. His batting average is over 100 points lower. And like, he's showing toughness. He's showing leadership. Philip put it great in the comments here. Marcel being hurt, but playing through it has its pros and cons. He's leading by being tough, but we are hurting without his best production. I could not have said it any better than what Philip just said. Okay. And so do you need to consider if we either sit him for a couple days or a weekend or whatever? He's not going to heal, right? He's not going to heal without surgery or being shut down for 3 months. Okay. But could he rest and maybe get a little bit better, right? Is this just something where you need to rest him, maybe 1 game every other series? You need to rest him 1 series a month. Is there some sort of amount of time that you could rest him and he could be maybe a little bit better, right? Do you need to put him on the injured list? And I think the hard part here is the default answer for us, if you just put Marcell Ozuna on the IL, is, okay, great. Now Drake Baldwin can DH when he's not starting, and Sean Murphy or somebody else can DH when Baldwin's in the game. The issue is, in the last 15 days, neither one of those guys are not hitting that well either. Drake Baldwin's batting .200 in the last 15 days. That's 10 games, 30 at-bats. Sean Murphy, 7 games, 21 at-bats. He's batting .190. And so do you wait for Jurickson Profar to come back? Do you say when Jurickson Profar's here, we can IL Marcell Ozuna? That would take him through the All-Star break. He'd be on the IL to the All-Star break, and you can rotate in Profar, Acuna, the catchers, whoever at designated hitter with Eli White playing in the outfield. Like, is that the solution? I feel like, and Lady Braves put it great in the chat here, the hip injury is going to get worse if Ozuna does not get some rest. It feels like, if nothing else, the production's gotten worse while he's not gotten rest. And whether or not you want to trade him at the deadline if you're selling, or you want to keep him and obviously use him and his production to get into contention, either way, I'm starting to wonder, does some sort of short break help you do either one of those things? Does his offense pick back up after a short break so you can trade him at the deadline? Does his offense pick up after a short break so you can get that offense in your lineup and get it back to contention? Either way, I feel like you should do something at this point. Because again, he's batting .203 in the last 17 games with 20 strikeouts, 9 walks, 2 extra base hits. It's a 576 OPS. And a reminder, the first 15 games before the injury, he was batting .306 with a 1.008 OPS. Okay. Georgia fan put it great in the comments. We could just put Ozuna in as the DH. He traveled. He was in Milwaukee for the road series. I didn't realize Ozuna was going to go on the road to follow all these guys. I thought that was fantastic. All right. In just a second, I want to talk to you guys about some of the changes that I've seen offensively in the data, in the numbers, about the things Atlanta's trying to do differently as hitters. We'll do that next, and then we'll get to your questions. I've started a couple of them already right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to our special Friday live show. Really love doing these things with you guys. It's tons of fun. Lots of comments, lots of questions. And I want to talk about the offense and what we've seen. Because let's be completely honest, the transition from the Kevin Seitzer offense to the Tim Hires offense has not gone great. We saw a couple guys where it felt like it stuck, right? Marcell Ozuna was doing really well with incredibly patient, drawing walks, all that stuff. Matt Olson, it was sticking with Matt Olson. He was drawing walks. He was more productive with the hitting approach. Not everybody else was fully internalizing it. They were sacrificing power by trying to be more selective and trying to be more put the ball in play over hit the ball hard. But they also weren't hitting for power because they were backing off on their swings and things like that. Michael Harris had been atrocious, right? He was awful during that stretch. Things have gotten a little bit different, okay? In the last, In the month of June, the average bat speed for this team has gone from 14th to 6th. So on average, they're either swinging harder all the time or they're firing off more A swings, which is the power swing, trying to do stuff like that. They've been more aggressive with their swing decisions. They're swinging at the first pitch more. That was something they had really backed off on doing, was swinging at the first pitch. The formula under Kevin Seitzer that worked so well in 23 was swing at strikes as often as possible, swing as hard as possible, right? And again, they got away from that. And it feels like it's starting to shift. And some of the guys who have been struggling this year, I do see a comment here from Philip about Michael Harris. I don't understand what he's swinging at up there. His pitch recognition is atrocious. It's been bad for a while. Now, I will say, the last 15 days for Michael Harris, he's batting .255. The last 15 days, he has the third best batting average on this team. Riley's batting .280. Ronald's batting .370. Ronald's just been absurd since he came back. I talked about this on yesterday, I think. Yeah. His homer pace for a full 162 is like 50 plus home runs. But Michael Harris, now that they've adjusted back to something closer to the original, what this lineup was designed to do, which was hit the ball hard, be aggressive at strikes, Michael Harris's production has started to rebound a little bit. Surge for 6 asks about Riley being up and down this year, a bit more shaky defensively. Do we think this is the real Riley? I do think that, offensively, he's batting .280 in the last 2 weeks. 2 home runs, 3 extra base hits. I think he's second on the team in extra base hits behind only Matt Olson, who has 5 doubles and 2 home runs. And definitely the defense, I think, was just a string of bad luck, right? We've seen guys kind of have a couple errors, get in their heads, and it can affect them for a while. Brooks Conrad had 3 errors in one freaking inning because he got in his head so bad. But it feels like Austin Riley was pressing at the plate a little bit. He made an error on 2 on defense, and it really started to get to him. And the errors started to rack up there. It was either that or it was the ground screw having it out against Austin Riley and no one else in particular. I really think it was Riley more so than the ground screw. That's a joke, by the way. I know some people, sarcasm doesn't always come across. That's a joke. But for the most part, this offense is starting to do a little bit better. Oh, by the way, that same stretch, Marcel Ozuna is batting .170. Again, you maybe need to think about sitting him there. But the Braves are getting more aggressive with when they swing, how often they swing, how hard they swing. And for some of these guys, for Riley, I'd argue even for Olson a little bit, it's paying off, right? Ozzy Albies is batting .190 over the last 15 days. He had a long on-base streak that he started. It just kind of went away, right? He just lost that on-base streak, I think, against Milwaukee. But you're in a situation that they're trying to fix it. And they're trying to get back to what they did. In retrospect, asking this lineup to completely change what they were doing from season to season was a bad idea, right? In retrospect, with long-term guys locked in who all have a similar approach. We swing hard, we swing a lot, we crush baseballs. It was always kind of a bad idea to try to wholesale transition the team over. If anything else, it should have been kind of what they did, where some of the pieces you added around those guys, a Profar, an Allen, a Verdugo, are higher contact guys to supplement who's there. But then you kind of ask your hitting coach to coach the long-term guys and the new guys differently, which is always a weird thing to do. Just kind of an odd thing there. There's a lot of great questions in here about the lineup, where you put Profar and Acuna, about potential trades. I have about 6 or 7 of these starred. Go ahead and drop the rest of your comments, rest of your questions in here, and we'll get to a little impromptu live mailbag next, right here on Braves Today. All right, let's get to your questions here live on YouTube. We got a lot of stuff here. The first one from earlier in the show when we were talking about Nick Allen a little bit. Can Eli White be an effective shortstop? I'm going to argue not enough, simply because if he was, he would have been doing it. Eli White, I mean, he is 31 years old. He has never played shortstop at the major league level. He did it in spring training. He did it in the minors. But from almost the immediate time when he was called up by Texas in 2020, he was put in the outfield. And I am a believer that you can find value with position changes. I kind of lean that way more for pitching than I do for position players, right? A reliever that you can get to start, the value is so much better than a reliever. I'm sorry, than than what they'll make as a reliever, because the innings they can cover, all that kind of stuff. But I do think that Eli White might be a situation where he could probably get by enough, and then you would need to make a defensive change later in the game for an actual defender if you're winning in Nick Allen. But if he was legitimately going to be a good defender, at shortstop, he would have done it in the major league level for somebody, right? Texas would have let him do it. Any of the minor league affiliates that he was with would have let him continue to play shortstop, but he's been moved off of it. Matter of fact, he wasn't a full-time shortstop at Clemson. They had him playing a lot of second and third as well at Clemson. So even back to college, like as soon as he got into professional baseball in 2017 in high A, they've played him at shortstop. This is Stockton with I think at the time that was Oakland's organization. They played him at shortstop, but they also played him in center field and right field. Like even as soon as he got in the majors, they were automatically not playing him at shortstop all the time. So I do think that you can try it in a game. We saw what I don't think he'd be as bad as Vaughn Grissom was at shortstop, right? But I don't think that he's a long-term or a all-day, everyday answer at short. I did see Moises in here asked about the Braves trading for Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. It's possible he would not cost a lot. He can play shortstop. If we don't think Nick Allen has enough offense at shortstop, why do we want IKF? To me, it doesn't. You're getting the same player, just more expensive and older. He's had his moments at short, and I'm pulling this up real quick. In his career, he's a 264 hitter. He's hitting well right now. He's hitting 297 right now, 375 slug. So he is, from a batting average perspective, doing better than Nick Allen. He's also costing, I think he costs $7.5 million this year. And defensively, he's not as good. None of the other stuff. His batting average is his on base is a 348. He's not walking a ton. I think he has 11 walks and 200 plate appearances. He's not hitting for power. He has 1 homer on the year. Nick Allen's not hitting for power. He is a slightly better and significantly more expensive and older Nick Allen. So, I mean, if they were covering the salary and they just wanted to get rid of him, you could take him. But I don't think he moves the needle for you at all. I just really don't necessarily think he moves the needle for you at all. somebody like Cat Mania said something in here about Max Fried being the best pitcher in Major League Baseball right now from an ERA perspective. Max Fried's gone to another level this season. And we all believe that the Atlanta Braves are a good pitching development organization. And I'm going to stick with the Braves are a good pitching development organization. The Yankees, to me, as a amateur pitching nerd, the Yankees are one of the best pitching development organizations in baseball. They are, if you were to make a Mount Rushmore right now of organizations that were very good at developing pitching, I would go with the Yankees. I would go with the Mets. It's really tough to have like somebody in your division be that. I would go with the Red Sox and I would go with the Dodgers. Those four are the best pitching development organizations in all of baseball. And they are on a different level than Atlanta. They are on a higher level than Atlanta. They are able to unlock guys that even a good organization in Atlanta can't do. Max Fried is a very, very good pitcher. He was a very, very good pitcher for the Braves in his career. I don't necessarily know if Max Fried would have been this good in Atlanta this year. Part of it's the offense. The offense has not been giving him the run support. But the Yankees have done some different things to Max Fried as far as not only his pitch usage, but like, you know, so the arsenal and how it interacts and everything. But they've also done they've done tweaks on his what he throws, how he throws it. Like this year, he's virtually scrapped the slider completely. He's throwing a sweeper 11% of the time. You know, it's still four-seam sinker, but he's throwing the four-seamer more. It's a whole lot of changes that I don't necessarily know if Atlanta would have been able to unlock in Max Fried, because they had Max Fried for 7 professional years, and couldn't unlock those. And to Moises' point here, Phil Tampa Bay should be in the list of pitching development. That second tier, I have Atlanta, I have Tampa Bay. I think Cleveland, reputation-wise, is still in there. In actuality, they may have dropped back a little bit. I've actually got Milwaukee in that second tier as well, and I think Milwaukee's kind of the sleeper there. The two things they do really well is they have catcher devil magic, right? William Contreras was a terrible defender here, to the point where Braves pitchers did not want to throw to him. Certain Braves pitchers, not on the record, but spoke to Mark Bowman, other beat writers, and said they did not want to throw to William Contreras. Those guys were never named, by the way. We never got names as to who those pitchers were. But if you go back and look at William Contreras' final season here, he didn't catch a single Max Fried start. So I don't know for a fact it's Max Fried, but part of me wonders if Max Fried is one of those pitchers who didn't like that. But yeah, like the Brewers, I have the Brewers in there. You can't do it without talking about the Mariners. I do think the Mariners got kind of lucky with a bunch of high picks that all panned out, but the Mariners can build a reliever like nobody's business. Matt Brash is absolutely filthy. I think the Mariners go up there. Again, the Brewers, the Braves, the Guardians, the Rays. Like there's a lot of second tier teams that are really good at developing pitching. And I think Atlanta's in that second tier, but that Mount Rushmore, Atlanta's not there. And unfortunately, the Mets are. And I think that's also part of the reason why everybody being mad about Griffin Canning being non-tendered and pointing to what he did this year isn't necessarily the right way to look at it. I do think Griffin Canning would have been useful to the 2025 Atlanta Braves. I don't think you would have gotten Griffin Canning's ERA to be 2 runs lower than it was last year in Atlanta. His changeup is one of the better changeups in baseball from a run value perspective. He's getting a ton of ground balls. He is playing over his peripherals a bit. There's a lot of blue on that StatCast, but I do legitimately think that that Griffin Canning is better in New York than he would have been in Atlanta because of that pitching lab and because they're on that Mount Rushmore for pitching development right now. So there wasn't really a question in Kat's thing, but I just wanted to talk for a minute about that. She did ask, Kat, I assume this is a female, could be a male, I don't know. Cat Mania did ask about trading Ozzy Albies. Here's the issue with trading Ozzy Albies is, one, he's been very, very good in his career. I mean, he's been one of the better offensive second basemen in his career at times when he's hot. Here's the other thing. Club options the next 2 years for $7 million. They have $4 million buyouts. So you're paying $3 million to have the potential of a very, very good second baseman. He's the longest tenured Brave. He has obviously a great relationship with Ronald Acuna Jr., who's going to be up for a new contract in a couple seasons. I understand in a vacuum the idea of why not trade Ozzy, but I think for $3 million to potentially get Silver Slugger, All-Star, MVP finisher caliber Ozzy Albies back is a pittance to pay. And I think the cost, the non-financial cost to trade Ozzy Albies would be devastating, right? Trying to move Ozzy Albies, again, longest tenured Brave, such a like a stalwart in the organization, in the community, and having the relationship he does with Ronald Acuna Jr., your superstar. The costs, the non-baseball costs, significantly outweigh whatever you might get for a down year Ozzy Albies, right? He's batting .233 with a .646 OPS. You would be selling low on Ozzy. The cost would be very high. The return you get would not be that great. So it's not going to happen. It's really not going to happen. Funny question in here, Georgia fan. Why do all Atlanta pitchers go to New York? And Philip answered it. It's money. I mean, Max Fried got a massive deal. The Braves were not going to go to either that per year commitment or that length of a deal. Griffin Canning, he specifically mentioned, so earlier in the year, I was doing some freelance writing for Sports Illustrated about the Mets. So Griffin Canning specifically mentioned the pitching lab, the biomechanical stuff, the pitching development of the organization when he chose to go to New York. He didn't go for money. He's not making a ton of money. He went because he said, I'm close to standard free agency. And if I can go to New York and rebuild my value with this very good pitching organization, then I can go cash it in free agency. So it was the money. It was directly the money for Fried. It was indirectly the ability to earn money in the future for Griffin Canning. Another question here, and if you have any more, go ahead and drop them in here. Moises also asked, when Profar comes back, I'd put him in the leadoff spot and Acuna batting third. The thing with batting Ronald anywhere besides leadoff is he wants to hit leadoff. He's been outspoken before that he wants to be your leadoff hitter. He likes hitting leadoff. I do agree that if he's not running, which we've not seen him run so far, then from a pure baseball perspective, from the, mathematically, how do you build the most optimal run producing lineup? Ronald should be batting behind Jurickson Profar. And if he's walking, Ronald should also be batting behind Marcell Ozuna. From a run creating perspective, it should be something like Profar, Ozuna, Ronald, Olsen, Riley, or something like that. But Ronald wants to be the leadoff hitter. And there is something to say about comfort and guys being in a position where they want to hit, where they are comfortable, and accordingly are producing. And I'm pulling up the career splits right now to see at every position, but I'm willing to bet he's been probably close to the best in his career as the leadoff hitter. I can't imagine he's outproducing it that much more anywhere else. Let me see. Ronald's batting .294 in his career as a leadoff hitter. He's batting .238 in the 2-hole, 26 games, so 116 plate appearances. He's batting .276 at cleanup. That's 157 plate appearances. And then everything else is tiny samples, right? 11 games at 6 games at the 7 spot, 1 game and 1 at-bat in the 8-hole. So technically he's batting 1,000 as the number 8 hitter, but he had 1 at-bat there. So Ronald's been best in his career at leading off. He wants to do it. let's let him do it. Let's not change things. Let's not move some stuff around. Let's just let him do that. Another question here, really good question from Surge for 6. After all of the double speak from AA in regards to spending and roster building, do you think if the team picks it up before the deadline, he does anything substantial? I am going to push back a little bit on the concept of the double speak. I talked about this a little bit on yesterday's show. Just how I've spoken to Alex Anthopoulos directly, right? And I'm not like saying that to brag. I mean, like I've stood next to him at the winter meetings and asked him questions on camera and gotten responses and all of that. I've been on Zooms with him. I have never once felt like he was deliberately trying to deceive us, right? He will be outright and honest and say, like, I can't answer that, or I can't speak to that. I can't do that, or I can't address that. But I like the vibe that I got. We talked to him immediately after the season, like wild card round ended, I think, on a Wednesday. We talked to him Friday morning, like right after the season. And so at the time, their plans were, yeah, payroll's going to go up. We're going to pick up Travis d'Arnaud's option. We're going to retain the coaches. And then a month went by. They got the Joe Jimenez news. And I think during that month, they got something from ownership, meaning Terry McGurk, about the overall payroll number was lower than they expected. So I don't think it was deliberate doublespeak. I think he told us his expectation at the time, and he did clarify early in that press conference, and nobody clipped that specific part of it. But he did explain that this is their thinking as of right now, but they haven't done all of their postseason meetings, their end of year meetings and all of that. He did make that clarification. I think that when he talked to us, he specifically intended for that to happen. He did it. He have a shopping list. I want to go out and address this and this and this. And he had these plans, because look at every single offseason around like 2020, 2021 on. AA's been very aggressive early in free agency. They've targeted somebody and they go out and they make a signing very early, right? They signed Ronaldo Lopez before the winter meetings. They re-signed Pierce Johnson and Joe Jimenez like before the winter meetings. Like they jumped really early and made a lot of these changes all of the time. Like they did them early. And this year they didn't. And part of me thinks it was they were told they had to pull back on money. And they just didn't, like that ruined their plans. And it took them a while to figure out what to do, waiting for prices to come down, waiting for guys to get cheaper. They ended up pulling the trigger on Profar. They tried to get Jeff Hoffman. They backed out of that deal because of medical issues and all that kind of stuff. Thank you for the super chat, by the way, Moises. I really do appreciate that. Thank you very much. And for the kind words on the explanations there, I appreciate that. I do think that Alex intended to do more than he did. But as far as trading at the deadline, I do think if Atlanta is a seller, that they're going to be aggressive at trying to get pieces so that they can ensure this doesn't happen next year. David O'Brien wrote a piece that dropped this morning, like 4 or 5 hours ago. And the number one trade deadline move that he suggested was trade Sean Murphy. And I think that's a terrible idea. Yes, Sean Murphy's not hitting that well right now. But he does have like a 118 OPS plus. He's been above average this year. At catcher, that goes even farther than it goes anywhere else. And having two really good catchers is a good problem to have. If you remember 2021, you had two good catchers. One got hurt, and then the other got hurt. And Atlanta had to use 7 different guys behind the plate in 2021. 7 different pitchers. They were grabbing guys that were DFA'd and sticking them in the lineup 2 days later. They didn't know the pitching staff. Thankfully, you had a generational offense that could fix that. But AA has said he did not want that to happen again. He does not want that to happen again. I would rather have 2 catchers that are really good, and you have to find ways to get them into the lineup, than to trade one and then the other one get hurt. And now your options are a 35-year-old James McCann, a 38-year-old Sandy Leone, or a 30-year-old Jason DeLay who has 10 games in the majors in his career, right? Like if you think about the options, we've complained so much that this Atlanta Braves team, because they play the starters every day, if somebody gets hurt, they just don't have anybody else who's starter caliber who can step up. And if you trade Sean Murphy and then you have an injury, you're right back in that exact same boat, right? You're right back in the boat of, if you trade Sean Murphy, Drake Baldwin gets hurt, he takes a foul ball off the hand, breaks his hand, or something, he's out for a month or 6 weeks. You're starting a 35-year-old James McCann. You're starting a 39-year-old Sandy Leon. Like you're stuck with a well below average option. And I say well below average option because James McCann has a rolling opt-out. If anybody offers him a major league contract, he can leave and go take it. Nobody's offered him a major league contract all season. So this is what MLB teams want. MLB teams don't want to have to play their catcher 5 out of every 6 games. Some of them have to. 1, the guy's good, but 2, the backup is so much worse. I would rather trade Marcell Ozuna to open up DH at-bats than I would trade Sean Murphy because of the injury risk you have with Drake Baldwin. Philip, thank you very much for the super chat. I see that. Also, I did get I'm excited about this. I want to show it off. I got a gift from a listener, someone I'm actually friends with in real life, of an autographed Dale Murphy card. I thought that was super cool. Let me know in the chat or in the comments on YouTube, like your favorite piece of Braves memorabilia. This might be one of my favorite pieces of Braves memorabilia. I do have a replica ring from the World Series in 2021, but this is pretty cool too. I got this just last weekend, so wanted to show that off real quick because I'm kind of excited about that. This has been another fun. I love these live shows. Thank you guys for being here. There's like 120 other people that have been in here all afternoon. Enjoying this with you guys. We're going to be back, barring some sort of crazy news like a trade or something. We'll be back on Monday. If you do me a favor, though, if you're listening on audio after the fact, leave a 5-star review with some kind words. Apple, Spotify, YouTube Music. If you're watching on YouTube and you didn't come here live for the live chat, it's probably because the notification bell is not turned on. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so that you know when we drop our daily episodes, again, Monday through Friday, as well as the live show that we do on Friday. Thanks to all of you who have been here. I appreciate the conversation, the questions, keeping me honest when I get something wrong in the chat. I love that. And until next time, this has been Braves Today.